Welcome, everyone. So we've all seen it, right? That fuzzy little spot on a piece of bread, or you open the milk carton and get that questionable smell. But what is actually happening on a microscopic level when our food goes bad? Well, today we're going to dive in and uncover the science behind food contamination and spoilage.
And that's a fantastic question to start with, because, figuring out what makes food spoil isn't just about avoiding a nasty meal, it's about understanding these invisible forces that can turn something perfectly fresh into something that could be pretty hazardous.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the main contamination threats. Then we'll get into the agents of spoilage, and you might be surprised to find out that some of them are actually desirable. After that, we'll properly meet the microbes responsible for all this, and we'll finish up with the secret recipe they need to grow, which is, of course, the key to stopping them.
So, let's get right to it. How does perfectly good food get contaminated in the first place? Well, it really boils down to three main threats. Understanding these is absolutely the first step to preventing any problems. It's so important to get that these threats, they really range from the completely obvious to the totally invisible. We're talking about physical things you can actually see, chemical substances you often can't, and then these microscopic organisms that are completely invisible to the naked eye. Okay, so let's start with the most straightforward one, physical contamination. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you find something in your food that just plain shouldn't be there.
And these unwanted items, they can get into the food at literally any stage of its journey. Could be a bit of soil still on the vegetables from the farm, maybe a loose bolt from a machine in the packaging plant, or, a hair that falls while someone is cooking in the kitchen.
Next up, we've got chemical contamination. Now, this one is often way more subtle than finding an object in your food, but it can be just as dangerous, if not more so.
And just like physical objects, these chemicals can pop up at any point. You could be looking at agricultural pesticides from the farm, some leftover cleaning solution in a processing plant, or even something like fly spray that's used too close to a kitchen counter.
Okay, so we know how contaminants can get in, but what is actually happening inside the food that makes it spoil? Well, there are really two core processes at work here.
You can think of it like a battle on two fronts. First, the change can come from within the food itself. That's a process of self-destruction we call autolysis. And second, it can come from these tiny external invaders, which, of course, leads to microbial spoilage.
This idea of autolysis is really fascinating. Just think of it as the food's own built-in clock, and it's driven by its own natural enzymes. These enzymes are exactly what causes a banana to ripen to perfection, but they're also the reason a cut apple turns brown when you leave it out on the counter.
And this leads us to a really surprising twist in the story. Sometimes we actually want our food to spoil. We figured out how to control these very same natural processes to create some of our absolute favorite foods. See? Not all change is bad.
Think about it. That very same enzymatic process, autolysis, that will eventually make a banana go brown and mushy, is exactly what we rely on to get a perfectly ripe, juicy, flavorful apple. It's a controlled change that we actually find delicious.
And we see the exact same principle with microbes. We intentionally add specific, helpful bacteria into milk to create that tangy yogurt we love. And we use very particular strains of mold to develop the sharp, really distinctive flavor you get in blue cheese. And of course, we have to thank another microbe, yeast, for our bread. This little single-celled fungus ferments the sugars in the dough, it produces carbon dioxide gas, and all those little gas bubbles are exactly what gives bread that wonderful light, airy texture.
So, since these microbes play such a massive role, both for better and for worse, let's take a closer look and get properly acquainted with the three main players. That's bacteria, yeasts, and molds.
First up, we have bacteria. These single-celled organisms, they are just everywhere. Now, as we've seen, some are incredibly helpful, but others are pathogenic. They produce toxins that can cause some really serious food poisoning if we let them multiply.
Then you've got molds. These are fungi that grow in these long, thread-like filaments. And what we see as that fuzzy patch on old bread, that's actually a massive colony of these filaments, all grown from a few microscopic spores that were just floating around in the air. And finally, yeasts. Now, these single-cell fungi are absolute masters of fermentation. All you have to do is give them a little sugar, some warmth, and some moisture, and they just get to work, producing the alcohol and carbon dioxide that are so essential for making things like bread and wine. So this brings us to the really practical part. How do we control these microbes? Because if you want to stop unwanted spoilage, you have to know what they need to grow. It's simple. If you can control their environment, you can control them.
So just think of these 6 factors as the essential ingredients in a recipe for microbial growth. Our goal, to keep our food safe, is to deny them one or more of these key ingredients. Now, while all of these are really important, let's zoom in on temperature. Why? Well, because it's one of the easiest and most effective conditions for us to control, especially in our own kitchens. Okay, I want you to memorize these numbers. Between 5 and 63 degrees Celsius. This is what food safety experts call the danger zone. And it's called that because it's the perfect temperature range where harmful bacteria multiply at an absolutely incredible speed. And this chart breaks it all down perfectly. See? If you get food hotter than 63 degrees, you destroy most bacteria. If you get it below 5 degrees, like in your fridge, their growth slows right down. And in the freezer, it pretty much stops altogether. So, your best defense is to keep food either hot or cold, but never, ever let it sit in that lukewarm danger zone.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you're putting away your groceries or packing up leftovers, I want you to think about this recipe for spoilage. How can you use what you know to deny those microbes what they need? Because now that you understand the science, you have the power to keep your food safer and fresher for much, much longer.